introduction. You online don't get it. Sorry about that. But we will let his talk do the speaking. Thank you. Welcome.
Oh, great. Good morning, everyone. And first, thank Dr. Burns for having me here. And it's my great honor to give this talk at Johns Hopkins. And I seriously mean it because I paid a lot of attention to this talk. You guys probably don't believe. Over the past 7 days, I just told Professor Burns, I have been traveling to 5 different countries and regions. And the day before yesterday, I just took a 14 hours nonstop flight back from Hong Kong to Los Angeles. Yeah.
Keep talking.
Okay. And so I only stayed in home, Los Angeles, for 1 day. And then yesterday, I took another red-eye flight, 11:30 p.m. from LA, and all the way flew to Washington, D.C., IAD. And so this morning, actually, I was very busy and took the train and get the rental car and stuck in 495 and 95 and all the way spent like 2 hours and I came to Johns Hopkins. So this talk, I paid a lot of attention to it. I really mean it. And the topic looks like really big. It's artificial intelligence, the power to change the world. And because I only have 45 minutes for the talk, and it's my hope and my intention to leave several minutes for you guys, both on site or online, to ask me questions. So I will just get into the topic and let you know why I specifically pick up this topic and what I want to share with you guys. First of all, probably you have already heard about the specific term industry revolution. Probably you also know there are a bunch of different versions of industry revolution. But in this case, when you look at it, and that's something I invented by myself. And I would say there are at least 5 different stages for the industry revolution. And the first one everyone know, and that's around 1840. And that's the steam-powered boat, car, train, and anything you name it. Because of course, my background is computer science. So I try to use everything and eventually mapping into a mathematical formula and to make it concise and easy to explain. So I would say, starting from here, I will use the formula. Always, we try to solve a problem from A point, and as human being, we use the new technology and try to move something from A point to B point. Okay, so that's the formula. And then now let's go back to the first one, the steam-powered revolution. And in this case, and a human being try to move the large object, the big stone, the big statue, and everything from A point to B point. Before that, people cannot do it. The good example is the Statue of Liberty. And before the steam power, the boat, and you cannot do the trans-Pacific, transatlantic. There is no way to ship all the components from France and all the way to the US. So that's the first one. And the second one, I call it as the second industry revolution with one company and initialized and started. That's AT&T, American Telephone and Telegraph Company. Why? Because in this case, and we transfer the very simple format information from A point to B point. And let's recall what happened before. Before AT&T, if you want to pass a very simple message information from one point, let's say from Baltimore and all the way to San Francisco, how long does it take? At least probably 2 months or 3 months, or if without train, with just a horse, then you need that long time to do it. But with AT&T, it's just 1 minute, probably less than a minute. So that's the second industry revolution. And then the third one, and that is with Bill Clinton's administration. And at that time, at the beginning of 1990, it's called the high-speed internet, the program. And in that program, after that, we are able to transfer the multimedia information from A point to B point. And so we are able to download a movie. We are able to download a music, which we couldn't do before. So that's the third industry revolution. And what is the fourth? And again, and we still transfer or transport something from A point to B point, but in this time, and we are transferring the wealth. So that's the cryptocurrency. And before we have the SWIFT code, so we have to pay a lot of money, probably $45 for the wire transfer. And also you have to wait. You have to wait 1 day or longer, unfortunately, probably a week, and to get the money, probably from Vietnam and all the way to Canada. But right now, and with the cryptocurrency, it doesn't matter. It's Bitcoin, it's Ethereum, or XRP, and particularly for XRP, because it's super large. It's not decentralized. So easily, just less than a second, you get everything done. So in this case, the fourth industry revolution, and we are able to move the wealth and from A point to B point. But the important thing is for this one, the last one, the fifth industry revolution. And in this case, we are able to move the knowledge and the culture from A point to B point. Because right now, if you look at any large language model, it doesn't matter. It comes from OpenAI, from Anthropic, or from Meta, anyone, or even from a Chinese company like Alibaba. It doesn't matter. It always, at this moment, and give you a relatively okay result. Try to just absorb the culture and the knowledge information from the whole human being's history and make you quickly understand anything. Right now, and if you don't understand something, it doesn't matter. It's the historical problem, it's a mathematical problem, it's a physical problem. It doesn't matter. You just easily throw and the question to ChatGPT. And of course, sometimes it gives you the wrong answer. But in general, and the model itself improved a lot. And you have very confident accuracy every day. So that's why, and if we look at these 5 industry revolutions, and every time it's always try to move something from A point to B point, but we are doing more complicated work and from the first and to the fifth. And right now, and the most cherished and valuable asset for human being, and which is our mind, our thoughts, and our culture. And we are able to move from A point to B point by a simple training and with 200,000 GPU and cost easily just less than 1 million or maybe $5 million. That's it. The cost is not that lower, but compared to the things we move from A to B, which is definitely very efficient. And secondly, and I want to talk about something and over the past probably 20 or 25 years, and that happened is gradually. So I do not call it a revolution, I call it evolution, because it's a slowly changing from NLP and all the way to large language models. Even right now, NLP and large language models, they are coexisting at this moment, but you can see, and that is the clear path from one point to another. First, I don't know if any of you still remember and this beautiful machine and named Deep Blue, and which was invented by IBM T.J. Watson Lab, and that happened last century in 1995 or something. But in 1997, and Deep Blue did a big thing. And I don't know if any of you, if you don't know Deep Blue, do you recall a name called Kasparov? And this is a great guy from Russia, and he had been the world chess champion for more than 20 years. And he has great memory. He doesn't need a phone book, and he can just memorize every single people's phone number and with the country area code. And he feel free to call anyone without any assistance. And even just like such a smart guy, and he was beat by Deep Blue. And the people got a panic. And they said, wow, that's amazing. That's just a computer and a Deep Blue. And they can beat Kasparov. But that is just the beginning of being panic. And the beginning of this century, I think Johns Hopkins was also involved, and Carnegie Mellon too. And a lot of research students and faculty members were involved in a project and with a show. And the show right now is still there, Jeopardy. And you just got answer some question from various topics and a different area and try to be as knowledgeable as possible. And so it's again an IBM, TJ Watson, and they said, and if we are able to build Deep Blue, and can we build up another machine and we can beat the most knowledgeable people and in the world? And that's what they do, or that's what we do, because I'm also involved in this project. And it happened, right? And do you remember? And for the champion out of the champion from Jeopardy, and he tried to compete with the machine and developed by IBM TJ Watson, and he failed. So at that time, and the machine was disconnected from the internet, from the rest of the world, only use the knowledge available and train inside. And also at that time, remember, we don't have large language model, only the very basic natural language processing. So the machine has to understand the complicated sentence questions, understand the problem, and go inside and find the knowledge relevant and absorb it and eventually formulate the answer and to beat the real human being and the champion out of the champion. So that's difficult. But this is not the end of the story. And later on, we also see Google and emerged out, and they did the AlphaGo and AlphaGo Zero. And Deep Blue beat the world chess champion, and AlphaGo and beat the world Go champion. And if you played the Go before, and you should know, Go is much, much more complicated compared to chess. But AlphaGo and did the job. And people say Li Shishi, and who was the world champion at that time, say, oh, come on, you should be strong, but you only beat AlphaGo once. And that is something for the entire human being. Li Shishi is the only person, and he beat AlphaGo just for once. Since then, and no human being has any chance to beat AlphaGo anymore. If you think AlphaGo is strong enough, no, AlphaGo is just the floor, because AlphaGo Zero is a much stronger version compared to AlphaGo, because they use AlphaGo to train the new model and they use AlphaGo to beat AlphaGo 0, AlphaGo 2, AlphaGo 4, AlphaGo 6. So AlphaGo 0 is something, and it's the ceiling version of AlphaGo. And but if you think that is good enough, no. And eventually, and we see, and in 2017, and Google published the paper, and then we see OpenAI, and we saw the ChatGPT, and now we see different versions, and like the XAI is Grok, and we see ChatGPT. So that is the way, and we see the evolution, and from the very beginning, and people try to build this algorithm, the machine, to beat part of the human intelligence. And right now, I think people got really confused and sometimes panic if AI is exactly beating every strength current human being has. But I don't have this concern, because when I still did the research at Carnegie Mellon, AI did not stand for artificial intelligence. Trust me, at that time, AI stands for autonomous idiots, because it's absolutely wrong. And you run 100 experiments, you probably only get 1 or 2 correct. So it's absolutely an idiot. Then later on, it evolves itself, improve itself, and get rid of the title and grab a new one. And the new one is always incorrect. It's still not correct. So that's bad. But right now, this is the real time, we call it artificial intelligence. But if we go back to the history, and we can see it's not easy. And I just kind of try to get everything together to build up a rule. And every 10 years, maybe just for 1 decade, we only have opportunity to build up one breaking through algorithm. That's it. It's really difficult to find. You can have 2 major algorithms developed, invented within the same decade. And back to 1960s, that's generic AI, and the professor at MIT and Marvin Minsky. And he had his great idea. And eventually he said, we want people to see the robotics, and we see the machine can do exactly as a normal human being. But that idea was just too advanced at that time. It failed. It bring a lot of faculty members and into this area, but because it's too difficult at that time, and they failed in research funding, and they failed in publishing paper, and they generate a big panic and for this research area. But around the 1970s, and the people paid great attention and got great results out of neural networks, right? And people believe, okay, and in this case, and we can use nonlinear combination and try to do something which we couldn't do before. And neural networks and played a very important role in 1970s and the 1980s. And but people say, oh, well, fitting is the killer for neural networks, and we need something more. And that comes at the late 1980s or beginning 1990s, and we see hidden Markov model, and which is really good, right? Because you have the emission probabilities, you have the interstate transition probabilities, and it gives you a great idea if I add time as one dimension and what the model can play an important role. And the beginning of 2000, and we see support vector machines. I don't have to spend a lot of time to talk about it. And the last 10 years from 2012, maybe 2013, and we started to see deep learning and get much more popular. And 2017 to 2020, and we see right now, and we see large language models. So every 10 years, every decade, you may only just see one big breakthrough. That's it. So if we already see a big breakthrough and happening within last 2 or 3 years, I would say it's not try to discourage any of you. It's relatively difficult. And for the following 5 or 7 years, we see another major breakthrough. Hopefully we can, because it's still the moral law, right? And we are exponentially growth. And here, the reason is for me to show this slides is I want to just to prove my point. Inside computer science, natural language processing, large language models, and all this are at least one of the pinnacles for this research. Why? Because that's why as human being, and we are able to survive in this world. If you are not an expert in anthropology, probably you don't know a lot of the terms of this words, but Homo sapiens, and they are actually the branch for our human beings. They are our ancestors. And the craftsmen, the Neanderthals, or like florist men, and they are the other branches of different kind of human beings. And back to many, many years ago, probably like millions years ago, Homo sapiens, our ancestors, they were weak and they were not very strong. When they fight with Neanderthals, and they are not exactly at the same level to compete one by one, but eventually we are the winner. Why? Because we are the better master of language. For Homo sapiens, and I think at that time, they can master around 50 words or probably up to 200 words. And don't forget the combination. So if they combine and all these words together, they can convey relatively complicated message to each other. So when we see Neanderthals and those strong and handsome guys, they can only control probably 10 words. So every time for a big battle, they can only gather 10 people. That's it. But for our ancestor, they can easily gather 200 people. Then just for individual, whether they are strong or not, it doesn't matter. 200 people easily beat just 10 people. So that's why eventually we become the prevailing dominance power in the world. And why? It's not because our physical strength, it's because the language. So that's why, and if you look at this slide, and you should get the feeling why Google is panic at this moment. And over the past 20 years, Google probably is one of the best companies in the world, and they have the X project, and they are only just not making big money from their search engine, and they also do a lot of great research and in various topics. So over the past 20 years, and Google is innovative, and they are leading the research. But somehow, and over the past several years, of course, I have to say they published the great paper, right? Attention is all you need, and it's still the credit belong to Google. But Google started to slow down, and you see a lot of people work from home, and you see a lot of people bring their pets and into their office, and you see a lot of people they started only work for 3 days, and they have 1 or 2 days free time to do whatever they feel would be benefit to Google, but eventually not. So Google is repeating their path as Yahoo did before, and everyone know what ends up for Yahoo. And so this is become a trend for a lot of large, gigantic the tech companies, and they slow down and inevitably. But another company rised up, and that company is also an old company with many years of history. That's Microsoft. And 20 years back in 2005 or 2003, and probably people don't want to go to Microsoft anymore because Windows become very old version and they don't have new cutting edge technologies. And people think Windows or Microsoft is old, and they find the new blood. They find the new leader, which is Google, and then this Facebook, now named Meta. So they all moved, flocked into new companies. But 20 years later, and we see a big swap. And we see the 20 years before Microsoft become Google. And right now the Google become 20 years before the Microsoft. And that's the industry trend. So if you continue and innovate and endlessly, still you cannot avoid the trend and only be popular and prevailing for at least 10 or 15 years. Then you are going to see the new strengths and breaking the ground. And in this case, when we look at the large language models, and this is not only just a new technology, and this is the end of some business model. And if we just still have a clear, vivid memory of several years back, when you try to find out or solve a problem, what are you going to do? And then you open the Google search engine, and you put the keywords, and you get a bunch of the links. And if you are fortunate enough, you click the first several links, and you look at the content inside. Probably you get the answer right away, or probably you can combine the contents from several links to generate your own answer. But if you are not lucky enough, probably you have to exhaust several pages of links. You still couldn't find the right content for your answer. Now, do you still need a search engine? No, you don't need it at all, because the large language model, any product, and let's just take ChatGPT as one example, it will be the terminator of your search engine. You don't need it anymore. And you probably think, oh, search engine is weak enough. No, at that time, search engine was so strong. Why? Because when back to 10 or 20 years ago, search engine just became the dominant power, I always use search engine as my bookmark. Before the search engine, I have a long list of the bookmark, and for our the website, or maybe for a news or for something. And then later on, I don't need it. I just search the keywords. I always get the link, and so I don't need the bookmark anymore. And right now, by using the ChatGPT or Grok or anything, and we don't need search engine, it gave you the one-stop shopping, and you get everything together. So that is the panic part for Google. And you probably say, no, don't worry about it. Google has Gemini. So every time when you do the search, Gemini will always give you the answer. But I don't know if you did a thorough experiment, particularly for writing and for anything related to liberal and arts. And it's our team's testing results. Grok and ChatGPT are among the best. And then probably that's come to Gemini, and maybe Llama 3, and the bottom is Anthropic's Cloud. but Claude is really good for business use, particularly to generate the code. So which are very different. But of course, if we have the different scenarios, then our testing result, evaluation result would be also different. And this part is very controversial, but I would say a lot of audience probably will echo my points. After large language models comes and float above the water, and that changes a lot of the research directions, and particularly and a lot of the middle layers and before, and we pay a lot of attention to it, right? We do parsing and we do the entity recognition and etc. But right now, and because we have the matrix of the large language models, and every time we throw the training data into it, and everything we need is to update the three matrices, and that's it. So that becomes relatively easy for us to do the train, and we don't have to do a lot of, we call it the intermediate process anymore. And here is something, I think that's the industry trend, and I want to predict, but I don't know if it's going to be very biased or that something would be accurate. Before, I think several years before, and people are dealing with, the perceptual intelligence, because that's all about the organs. It's all about our eyes, about our ears, about our mouths. So what we did is speech recognition, ASR, automatic speech recognition, and we do the TTS, text to speech, and we do image recognition, we do biometrics, and we do everything, and just in this perceptual domain. But right now, you see, we switched the attention from a perceptual to cognitive. That is because the larger language model, and we are able to do much better job compared to statistical machine translation or compared to the old version of natural language processing. So that is a very important switch from the perceptual to cognitive. And if we look at the big companies, particularly the public company currently available and in the world, let's take one example, which is the Palantir. Palantir is a great company. Why? Because it originally and starting its own business from the perceptual intelligence, and they do the biometrics valuation, and they do a lot of the face recognition for CIA and for the government agencies, and they made a lot of money. But right now, if you look at this moment, the company with good or big valuation, no matter when we talk about XAI, we talk about the OpenAI, etc., and we switch and the attention from perceptual to cognitive. But do you think that trend is going to continue forever? No, that's not my judgment. I believe eventually, and we will come back to perceptual again. Why? Because I don't know if you call this is an important part. When we do the large language model, this is only for the knowledge base. Like for example, large language model is easily to get the concept. If you're driving 200 miles per hour, which is reckless. If you are driving 50 miles per hour, which is relatively safe. But does he have the real idea how fast 200 miles per hour is? He doesn't. So now we need the robotics and come into the scene. We need to use the IoT, the Internet of the Things. We need to use the sensors to transfer and move the knowledge, the idea learned from the training data, from the textbook to the robotics, and let the robotics use his arms, legs to touch the real world and get the feedback to bridge the gap between the perceptual, cognitive, and the real world. That's why right now, if you look at Boston Dynamics and any other robotics companies, their valuation threw out of the roof. So that is the trend. So right now, if you, after your graduation, you still want to join a company, pay great attention to perceptual intelligence, which is still good because it's a mature industry. If you join any large language model companies, which is also good because that's currently prevailing, that's cognitive. But if you are able to combine something and move it to robotics, and I think, and that is the future, that is the trend. So eventually, and we are going to combine perceptual, cognitive, and hardware and everything, and just into one subject, and which is the real hardware of the robotics. So now let's talk about something pretty interesting, and which is I called the paradigm of a human exist revolutionize. What does that mean? Let me go back to 30 or 40 years ago, and when I was still a child in China, and in 1980s, a lot of families, and they started to have the landline phone, and which, of course, compared to US, is a little bit lagged behind. But when I was just a 7 or 8 years boy, I see, oh, I can use the phone to call my classmates, to call my friend, and he can immediately talk to me. That's amazing. I don't have to travel. I don't have to bike and to his house to talk to him in person, which is amazing. And every time when I call my friend and my father, and always and besides me, and I say, why? Are you eardropping what I'm talking about? And he said, no, I'm calculating how many minutes and you spend with your friend. Because at that time, every minute is money. So when you do the call and you pay a lot of attention to time, because the time is minute, the minute is money. And when you go outside, when you go overseas, and the most panic thing is the overseas roaming, the international roaming, because it's going to charge you or rip off you a lot if you didn't use the phone correctly. But right now, do you still pay attention to how many minutes you used? No, none of us, because it's almost unlimited. It doesn't matter. You use AT&T, you use T-Mobile, or you use Verizon. It's unlimited. Right now, what do you pay attention to? Your megabytes, your gigabytes, your international data roaming. And that is something you pay attention. Because if you didn't do correctly, and when you travel in Paris or in London, you would be easily to receive a $500 bill if you consistently watch Netflix and use your overseas and international data roaming. But of course, you are not going to use it. So that is the current norm. And we do not use minutes anymore. We use megabytes, gigabytes, and as our norm to do evaluation of our cost. But we are already getting into a new era, and we are not going to pay any attention to gigabytes anymore. And we are going to pay attention to tokens. Because at this moment, I'm pretty confident most of you are still using the ChatGPT or Grok for free. And it's the free version. I don't think you pay $20 per month to get the paid version. But I'm pretty sure, and in next year, maybe in 2 years later, and you are going to use to it. You are going to pay the $20, or maybe at that time it's already $50 per month. It's like you pay your internet fee. It's going to be an inseparable part of your life because you need the token to ask a question, and you need the token and to see the answers, and you need to see the tailored, customized answers for you. So token and will be the next generation value of the money and of the cost. So see, that's why we go through from the minutes and to bytes, and from the bytes to tokens. So that is the trend we see, the technology revolution or evolution, and over the past 50 or even 80 years. And that is another trend, and we can see how complex the current technology is. At the very beginning, what we did, and it's the speech recognition. So we transcribe the audio into text. That's it. And later on, and we improve ourselves, and we can translate the text back to audio. So that's what we call the TTS. And right now, what do? We can translate the text as the question and into the text as the answer. That's the advanced version of our QA system. But we are not stopped at this. We're not stopped at this point, and we already see mid-journey, and we see stable diffusion, and a lot of the new version and the new models, and we can do text to image. And I don't know if you have the invitation code to download the Sora 2 and to play with it, which is amazing. So currently, and we also can do the text and to audio, text to video, and everything. And that is not only just a technical trend, and that is going to be the industry trend for a lot of different segments. Currently, because I'm living in Los Angeles, when I talk to the directors, talk to the producers, and talk to those the professional photographers, they got panic because when they look at Sora 2, they look at the clear description about the thing, and when they look at the quality of the generation, the result, and they think probably they are not needed anymore. And you can just sit in your office, write a very beautiful description about what you want to generate. And you don't need a professional photographer to just do the shooting for you. And you don't need the producer or you don't need the director to tell you what would be the next thing and what would be the next chapter. You can do pretty much everything with you. Or you can just get a small group of professionals and they can just produce a lot of great content as currently one big studio couldn't do. So those are the mass adoption of AI tools. And recently, and for IceKredit, because like Professor Burns mentioned, we are really good doing the anti-fraud and the online credit scoring products to serve American population. But recently, and we did a lot of things new, which is really nice. Like for example, and we use we call it the animal version, large language model, to understand the barks from dogs and the meows from cats. And we build a collar, and the collar has a very tiny and chip inside. And that collar, and you can easily just put around your cat or your dog. And every time when they bark, when they meow, and from the app, and I can easily understand and what like he is happy, he's not happy, or he's hungry, or wants to play with you. Of course, it's not that accurate, but that is definitely at one level above. And we also get the chips and inside the pad and their small house. So every time when they just lay down inside, and we can measure their weight, we can measure their heartbeat, and we can also measure their temperature. And everything is different for different the breed of dogs. For German Shepherd, for Lab, or for Husky. And probably just all they sleep for 5 hours per day. And we're just totally give you the different health related information. So we also put all this information together to build models for each of the pets. So those are something originally, and I just couldn't imagine, and we can have those work done. But right now, and all these things are just such easy things for us to do. Sometimes we have to train the vertical model. Sometimes we don't. We just easily to borrow the API and to connect and enjoy the content and directly generated by other big companies. And that's it. And this slide is something I think it's extremely important. Again, this is my personal view. It might be correct, it might not be, but I still definitely enjoy to share this with you guys. I called the first mile and the last mile because remember, originally, and when we try to invent a project and we have to do everything, of course, not just by yourself, you need a team, you need an elite team to work with you together from the very beginning, breaking through the ground and work all the way until the middle stage and then wrap up and get the final results. Right now, no, we don't have to repeat this process anymore. Why? Because we have such powerful available API for us. I want to just give a metaphor or just a similarities here. It's more like we walk into a very large stadium, and the stadium is full of AI tools. And those AI tools could from Midjourney, from XAI, from OpenAI, from Meta, from any startups. They have already give you all these AI tools. You don't have to rebuild any of them. All you need is the first mile to identify the problem. If this is a real problem, you need to tackle it. Or if it's just a problem for you to publish several papers, it's different. I still remember that Chen Yang, and who is the Nobel laureate, and who just passed away several weeks before, and he was 103 years old, which is really cool. And he mentioned why he became a physicist rather than a mathematician. He said, I followed the path of Albert Einstein, because when he was a research fellow at the Princeton Advanced Research Institute, and he talked to Einstein. He said, you have really good sense about physics, and your mathematics is also very good. So why don't you become a mathematician? Instead, you become a physicist. And Einstein said, well, I can solve mathematical problems in a really decent way, and I can do the same thing for physics. But the difference is in physics, I can tell if this problem is important or not, and I can tell if I have the capacity or bandwidth to solve this problem. And in mathematics, all I know is I'm able to solve this problem, or I probably not be able to solve the problem. But I don't know if this is going to be the trend. I don't know if this is important. So that's the difference. So eventually, and this intuitive make me believe I should be a good physicist instead of a good mathematician. That's the same way right now. I think all ability we should have is to identify if this is the real problem. And I call this is the first mile. So after your graduation, no matter and you want to continue as a postdoc, be a faculty member, or you want to join a good technical company, or you want to join financial institutions, or do your own startup. This is the ability I think you should get trained at Johns Hopkins, and you should be able to identify the problem itself. And then the last mile. And when we do the last mile, it's not because we don't want to do the intermediate process. It's because we are not able to do it. Like, for example, right now, do you have the larger training data as OpenAI has? Probably you don't. And can you compete the larger scale data you have to XAI? Probably you don't. Even though you have all this training data, and are you able to afford to buy 200,000 GPU, 800, A100, or maybe let's say it's a very simple one, H20. Are you able to buy that many to do your own training? You probably don't. So that's why, and even you have the intention to do it, but you do not have the resource to get involved in the intermediate process. But again, fortunately, you have the outcome and you have all those available APIs. So all you need is try to use your knowledge and your ability, try to customize and all those AI tools and into the shape and into the position, you are able to better use all those tools. And then you feel comfortable and confident to combine and all these tools together and into your own scenario. And I think that is a completely changed the norm compared to several years back. So right now, who will be a successful entrepreneur and which company will be a successful startup? It doesn't matter whether they understand the algorithm itself so well, but instead they should understand the whole process, identify the problem, and maneuver and try to do the adjustment for the available algorithm through different tools and better utilize and take advantage of the available existing products and eventually combine in your own way. And that's the new ability, I think, for every new graduates they should have. And that is something, again, I think everything and will be rewritten by AI. But I think that is something and we can talk about forever. But I just going to spend a few minutes because I think right now it's already 11:34. In this case, I think probably if you use Anthropic Cloud, you already know. For a lot of what we call the junior programmer, and they are already at the edge of losing their job because we don't need them to write a very basic line of codes. It doesn't matter. It's 100 lines. It's 10,000 lines. It doesn't matter because cloud can easily generate most of them in a minute. But do you think cloud would be easily to replace the architect? No, I don't think so. And a lot of other people said, hey, you don't have to go to law school anymore. And Yale University and their ranking is going down. And Harvard University Law School is not popular anymore because we have the AI, we have large language models, and we can completely replace all those attorneys. Is that about right? Yes, you're right. Because for those paralegal, and they should be panic because those are the basic and fundamental, the paperwork. And all those jobs right now, it's so easy to be completely taken by AI. We used to have 3 attorneys and in-house. Right now, we still have 3, but they are doing totally different job. And right now, if I want agreement, and I can use ChatGPT easily to generate the agreement. I don't need the paralegal or the attorney to do this job. But again, when we are facing IPO and we are facing the good people from the accounting firm or from IBD, investment banking division, and from all these different type of people, they are help us to be public and IPO. What do we need fundamentally? We need communications. We don't need the paperwork. And so for those attorneys, and they are still doing good because they take the most of the lift to do the communication job rather than just come up with agreement. So everyone, even though right now, and they think their job will be replaced by AI, but if they look deep and into what they have been doing in their segment, they should feel confident there is a way for them to better utilize AI as a weapon rather than as a replacement. And because originally and at the beginning of my career path, and I was a high frequency trading strategist. So I did a lot of the high frequency trading algorithm and work with my partner, the trader, together. And right now, and when I still in active discussion with these traders, they are not afraid of AI at all. And they use all these models as a better tools and for them to compete with others. So right now, and we build up and as a UI, and we drag the PDF and from the public company's financial report, and we also drag and the different interesting URL and into the system and to generate and those useful information and variables. And those variables eventually and were converted into the new, we call it the attributes and the signals and in their own training. So right now, AI has already emerged and large language models become prevailing. But for most of the traders, they don't lose their jobs. They are still kicking and living. And the only thing is right now, and they are competing with each other at a new level and with the help of AI. So it's still the same group of people. It's more like originally you are a rider, you do the horseback riding, and you feel panic when you see Volkswagen, when you see Pontiac, and when you see Mercedes. but later on they become the driver of all these cars. So there is no panic for a new technology coming out, and particularly as the graduates, undergraduates of Department of Computer Science, and we should embrace and all these technologies. And finally, I think that is the last two slides of my talk. If you are at the edge of graduation, and these are some suggestions I want to share with you, because there would be three different stages for the entire industry to embrace AI. The first I would call the financial institutions, the big genetic tech companies, and for all those companies, they have the e-commerce business. Why? Because for AI at the very beginning, it requires the structured data. And what are the best format of the structured data? It's only the numbers. So that's why for financial institutions, they are among the first group of industries to embrace AI. Because number one, they have a very regulated and they have very structured, well-formed data. And then number two, they have a long history of data. So it's so easy for them to have the structured data well trained and for their modeling. So that's what we call the first adapter or trailblazer of AI. And later on, we are going to see another group of industries. They are going to embracing AI. And those, they have a lot of data, but they need to clean the data. And they have to use a certain way to combine them data and into a good position for AI to train and to better utilize the advantage. And the third tier is the last, which are the rest of the industries. And those companies at this moment, they don't need AI at all. A lot of companies, they made a big mistake. They think right now it's the era of AI. I have to use AI anyway. Even I'm not ready, I need to use it. It's wrong, it's a wrong decision for sure. And they have to wait to the right timing when AI technologies are mature enough to be used in that segment. So I think if you are graduating at this moment, you have to pay attention to go into the first tier or the second tier company, but not the third tier. And even this shows strong enthusiasm to you to say, oh, you are really good student from Johns Hopkins. I need you to help me to break through the ground. No, you don't have to. And you need to work with something, some industry have a readiness for AI rather than the third tier. And the last part, and I think it's kind of, again, a little bit debatable because it's not only just happening in the US, it's happening in everywhere and for the rest of the world, which is a lot of countries pay a lot of attention to STEM, and they do not pay a lot of attention to liberal arts. And that is particularly the trend in Asia. It doesn't matter that's in Singapore, in Japan, in South Korea, in China, and everywhere, even in India. It's the same thing. If you look at the number of fundings and then received, right, and in India, IIT, of course, EC department and a lot of those STEM-related department get most of the funding. For liberal arts, even very good liberal arts, like Amherst or Williams, if you look at their university college as a whole, they do not receive a lot of research funding. But of course, they're liberal arts. Of course, they pay a lot of attention to teaching. I know that. The thing is, with the trend of AI, with the trend of large language model, I can see there is a slowly happening and a change of the trend. And we are going to see with the assistance of large language model and the assistance of AI, the boundary between liberal arts and STEM become blurry. And eventually, and these two originally completely separated area will be merged together. So for liberal arts, and they are better utilize the technology to get into STEM. And for STEM, and they have a better understanding with the help of large language model into history and into comparison, literature, etc. So that, I think that's something trend and happening. And the picture and I showed here is just because why and we believe, strongly believe STEM is good is because over the past century and from the Franco-Prussian War to First World War, Second World War, always technology wins the game. Every country, as long as they have the best of the technology, they wins. At the very beginning, that was Germany, and then become England, then becomes the US. So we all believe, and that is the trend, and the trend will continue. And so STEM will always receive most of the funding from NSF. Right now, it's still happening, and in the near future, it is. But I think eventually, and it will change a little bit. So I think I will just leave 5 minutes for questions. So hopefully you enjoy the talk. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you. Yes, please.
So what I noticed in your timeline for technology, right, you didn't touch on disruption, but then it occurred to me that all the technologies that are part of this industrial revolution cycle are almost, they actually have a sort of anti-fragile sort of domain to them, right? Going back to what Nassim Taleb talks about, right? Anti-fragile. So it almost seems like they're immune to disruption, right? Is that something that you kind of make out from these different technologies? Because in one form or another, we're still using those technologies, right? So be it the telephone, be it the internet, be it even I mean, we've transitioned from the, steam engine to the internal combustion engine, but it's just another iteration of the steam engine, right? So is it that for a technology to be part of some kind of industrial revolution, it has to be anti-fragile. It has to be immune to disruption.
That is a really good point. And to be honest, I didn't think about this before, which is really cool. I think originally what I want to express is the new technology cannot offer the immunity to the older system. Because even though right now, from a telephone to internet and to large language model, you're right, we are still using telephone, but we are using telephone in a totally different way. Originally, when we use the Motorola and we use Nokia, and we purely use the phone to make phone calls. And right now, we use the mobile device, basically for our Netflix, for our short video, and for our chatting, and use different apps. So even it's still the same carrier, but I think the purpose has already been changed. And later on, maybe I would say in 10 years or something, probably we don't need a phone anymore. Even those physical carrier would be completely abandoned. So I would rephrase what I said before. For every technology from one version to another one, it probably does offer certain immunity for the new system continue to use the older technology. But eventually, maybe not right after the version before that one, for several versions later, it eventually will completely replace the older version for sure. Hopefully that answers your question. Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, just to follow up on that.
Yeah.
So what is your opinion on quantum computing, and do you think it will disrupt cryptocurrency in a sense, right? And will the quantum computer be its own revolution, industrial revolution?
I truly believe so. Although maybe my opinion is completely wrong, but I truly believe so. Number one, quantum computing definitely right now is the trend, because every conference, every forum I attend, and this is a dominant topic, and people always talk about it. And back to cryptocurrency, and I'm a little bit afraid of that because I have a relatively decent amount of cryptocurrency. I certainly don't want my wallet completely go bankruptcy, right? So yes, I think it is a trend, and it's going to put a very important impact for cryptocurrency, for sure.
You're in the same boat as my brother, because he actually told me to ask you this.
Right? Yes. It's going to,
bullish on crypto.
yes, it's going to be the final weapon or resolution for cryptocurrency. Yeah. We will go for this. Yeah, sure.
Interested to know your opinion of, as someone from industry, about the downside, the risk areas of AI. You've emphasized the huge potential, but there are areas of concern such as hallucinations and uncertainty and bias and fairness and a host of other risk of security,
Yes.
safety. So how do you think industry, I mean, they're plowing ahead, but in the longer term, how do you think they'll end up balancing the reward and the risk?
Well, that's a truly good question. And the reason I didn't touch this topic is because I would consider this is a 3-hour long the discussion and for a brown bag seminar. But just in short version to answer your question, 3 days ago and in Hong Kong, I had a good discussion with Professor Jeffrey Sachs, and who is a professor at Columbia University, and he has been the counselor to the general secretary for 3 times. And we talked about that, and I said, for the downside, there is a good way to solve it. I call it the guardrail, but the guardrail has to be existing at 3 different levels. The first level is from the government, which is the law and order, and we should just set up the red line. And for some companies, you cannot cross the red line. And the second is the big companies' governance. And I think at this moment, a lot of companies, and they have certain level of the governance, but they are certainly not good enough. And we have so many things to do. Like, for example, the pre-filtering of the training data. If we purposely to put the noise or try to make the dirty and into the training data, like we put a lot of the Nazi comments into it, eventually it's going to inevitably to change the result of the large language model, which is really bad. And at this case, neither the government or the big genetic tech companies handle this in a very good way, and which generate a lot of concern for me. But eventually, I think in addition to the government and to the big tech companies, and we also have, or we have to have, the good education at the university level. And we should let all students understand from the very beginning, for large language model, it's not take it for granted, it's good. From the pre-filtering training data and to the post-filtering from the government propaganda, or like some purposely injected noisy data. There are a lot of ways, and we have to solve it. So those is a combination and a systematic way for us to do it. We have a long way to go.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah, please.
Given your unique background in finance, AI, and tech, do you think the AI market is overhyped? And if by mid next year there will be no breakthrough from any major AI company, the market will crash?
Well, number one, this is about trading. So any of my opinion will be just purely from my own. It cannot generate the investment suggestion. Number one, I think for US market, yes, because it has gone through the all-time high, ATH multiple times. It's not healthy. And I'm pretty sure the correction time is coming. But the correction to what level? It's very difficult to project. And in this case, we have to consider another market, which is extremely important, which is the Chinese market. Because when we talk about the AI, we only talk about the Americans and the Chinese. No offense to Indians, to Europeans, please, no offense. Because when I talk to any people and in Sand Hills and in University Boulevard and in Bay Area, and particularly I talk to KPCB, talk to Sequoia, Union Square, and A16Z, and all these top tier VCs. And they say, Lingyun, when I see you, I feel assured. Because if right now I see a startup only with Americans, I'm not going to invest it. I need to see a Chinese face because that will assure me and this AI company is for real. So that we cannot avoid the competition between China and the US, particularly the unstable and very negative, the political environment in China right now, and generates this competition in a totally different way. I definitely don't want to see the competition is going in this very negative way. But given that said, sometimes the US market is not only affected by its own economy. Like right now, when we look at the stock price for NVIDIA, right now it's almost around $200, and the total valuation is over $5 trillion. Why? Because China is loosening its policy and lets NVIDIA to get into its markets. But remember, the stock price of NVIDIA crashed to $89, $87 just 2 or 3 months ago. And then the fundamental of this company shouldn't change that much. Why? Because we see DeepSeek. And people believe DeepSeek will be an important and dominant competition power to NVIDIA. And they don't need or require or consume so much computation power. And then now we see China also generates the new one, it's called Manus. And that is really good for agents. So all this information we need to combine with AI together without the consideration of Chinese markets. I would say the US market should be corrected half a year ago. Because if you look at the PE, PS, and the valuation system, it's yield. It's not realistic at all. But why it still stay all-time high so many times? Because a lot of people believe if I need to pull the money out of the Chinese stock market, where should I go? I should get the money into the US stock market. So that's why the stock market is still so hot, and there are so many money from China, from Japan, and from South Korea, and it flock into the US market and continue to buy those tech stocks. So in this case, I would say eventually it will last the trend for another half a year or 1 year. But eventually, I agree with you, it will crash.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
That's for you to show your perspective. Thanks to everybody online. I'm going to end the call.
Yeah, I think I just
Oh, good.
end it.
Thanks for the nice talking. It's great meeting you.
Thank you so much.
Hope you have a good rest of your summer.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, we can talk about more about this.
Awesome, Tom. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Because right now we always use WhatsApp or we use WeChat, so I never believe that this is.
You never
involved.
know,
Yes,
yes.
yeah, it's true. When we let it go, not sure. You got that, yes.
Yeah, see you soon.
We have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I can set it up.
I would spend 10 years in history. Oh, really? Yeah, history for 6 years.
Yeah, it's actually. So I'll end this.
Yeah, it should have ended. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay. Just double check.